Hey guys, it's so glad to be here with all of you. I think we had a very enriching session, the last one that we had, where Sachin was hosting a bunch of very insightful speakers from different organizations, and I hope all of you got some insights from that entire conversation. Sachin, you overshot the time a bit, so you will be penalized for that. Um, you've been asking a lot of questions to those guys. So I think it's time we asked you some questions and got your views on that.
Go
Uh,
ahead.
you're ready for that?
Yeah, shoot for it.
Cool. So we'll jump right into it. So Sachin, taking a leaf from what you were talking about earlier during your keynote, as well as some of the points that were discussed just in the last previous session. Uh, you talked about how and why it is imperative that recruiting process has to be essentially skill based, right? Let me stretch that thought a bit, right, and ask you this: why do you think resumes are irrelevant? Resumes as they exist today, why do you think they are irrelevant?
Right. So that's a great point, Vishy. And as you would know, we've kind of debated about it, talked about it as an organization over the years. Uh, with the whole, and I kind of touched upon it as you said in the keynote as well. With the whole democratization of education today, in my opinion, and that came out in the panel as well. Isaac was talking about it. It really does not matter what school you went to, where you worked in the past, because it's become so easy for someone to develop like good coding skills. Of course, you got to put in the time. Nothing to take away from it. One thing that formal education system does is it puts you through that rigor of spending time. But there are equally motivated people who probably don't get a chance to go through, some of the Ivy School leagues, but they do spend up that much time developing their skills. And there's no dearth of resources out there. Unlike a traditional, say, discipline like civil engineering or mechanical engineering, where you cannot create that tool set at your own home, computer science has the entire world in your laptop, right? So I think that's why resume to me matters actually nothing. It's mostly about what skills you have, what competencies you have developed, and as long as you can objectively speak about those skills, resume carries very, very little weight. At least that's what we do at HackerEarth, and that's what we're seeing a lot of organizations have started doing too. So within that light, I kind of wanted to talk about what we've done in the recent past from a product point of view. So, like I discussed about, the world is kind of moving towards a skill-based hiring, and the whole concept of skill has become centric to HackerEarth product as well. Everything that we have, from the perspective of generating relevant assessments, flows through our skills. So a skill is a centric entity using which you can create different kind of tests on HackerEarth, and then those skills flow through from the test onto the reports, and that's how a hiring manager would also get insights about what are the skills in which a person has shown have developed competencies or not. Particularly, what stands out from our product perspective is we have multiple ways of generating assessments, all centered around the concept of skills. So if you already know what are the skills you want to use to create a test, just dive in, select the right skills, and the system will create a test for you. If you are a recruiter who doesn't necessarily possess that information in terms of what are the core skills that a job requires, but you always have a job description at your disposal. In that case, we built out a cool NLP-based engine that parses the job description, extracts the skills out of it, and then generates a test for you. And the third way we kind of empower the skill-based hiring is there are some common roles which are fairly popular. Almost every organization has openings in those roles. So we have created those common role definition using certain skills. So let's say you're hiring for a backend engineer, you come into HackerEarth, select that role. The system will tell you what are the skills that are mapped to that role and will automatically generate a test. So I think the world is moving from a pedigree-based to a skill-based hiring, and sooner rather than later, everybody has to follow suit.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, that's something that I have experienced as well, and this is something that is changing very rapidly, I would say. That kind of just aligns with what we are trying to do at HackerEarth, like you said. Uh, Moving on, one of the things again that was covered in great depth was about how diversity and inclusion kind of play a big role these days, right? especially when it comes to tech workforce and hiring high tech workforce. So demographically, only 25% women are, workforce is present as far as the tech industry is concerned. Similarly, African Americans, less than 10% of, our tech workforces comes from there. So could you share your thoughts on why, that is the case in the tech industry in the first place? And then maybe, how do you think we, Hacker as an organization, is solving that problem?
Right. Great point. There's been, a lot of dialogue over various sessions today on the why, but I'll still kind of give you my perspective.
Sure.
People often say it's a pipeline problem. I disagree. I don't think it's just a pipeline problem. Yes, there is obviously underrepresented minorities are probably lesser in numbers when compared to the other population segments, but it's not just a pipeline problem. There are diverse candidates out there. I think there is a systemic bias, and not even a conscious bias for some of the organizations now, a very unconscious bias. We don't want to look beyond those traditional sources. How many of us are today willing to say, okay, I'll probably look at candidates from the bottom 10 percentile of the schools, engineering schools? No, we don't, because we've just been working that way, right? So I think there has to be a very focused effort on breaking down those systemic biases that exist, beginning from sourcing to the way we shortlist resumes and the way we shortlist people based on skills to the way we do interviews. I think all of that needs to be looked into, objectively measured, and then systemic actions have to be taken. Organizations need to spend time on using the tools that allow such things to, an objective screening and interviewing process to be conducted. They need to invest in training to make sure that their hiring managers know how to fight those unconscious biases during their hiring process. And for us at HackerEarth, this has always been it's been something close to our hearts. In fact, one of the reasons why we kind of started with HackerEarth was we very strongly believe that, talent can come from anywhere. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past. And hence, making sure that the companies kind of fight this problem of bias has been central to HackerEarth. In the recent past, we've built out a lot of features that actually support that. So not just that our library of content is certified non-biased, and we've done a bunch of adverse impact studies. And what gives me so much joy in sharing is that we actually found that the assessments that we conduct were perceived to be positively biased towards underrepresented minorities, primarily because it's a very objective level playing field, and hence they feel more comfortable. So that's one thing that we've done over the past few years. Apart from that, we recently launched an interesting feature, which is around masking all kind of personally identifiable information. So we encourage our customers to not look at the resume. We ask them to just send out the right assessment for the role, and based on how people perform, decide whether they should move forward on the interviewing process or not. But of course, there is a little bit of loophole there. When hiring managers look at the reports, they can get to see who the person is, what their names are, and through that, they could be biased. So there is an option today for recruiters to turn off or mask this personally identifiable information that makes sure that the hiring manager is only looking at objective skill reports and not a lot of information, I mean, not any information about the candidate ethnicity and background per se. And we not only extend this for our assessments, but we also do it for our video interviews. So if you turn on a PIM asking for video interviews, we'll hide all the information. We'll even turn off the video, and we generate transcripts at the end of the interview so that we kind of have a record of what happened in the interview and could be used as a diagnostic tool as well. So those are some of the things that we've done in the recent past from a bias perspective.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense, Sachin. Another thing, a lot of times we've talked about diversity in the context of gender or race, right? Would you consider things like socioeconomic background and even culture, kind of being one of those factors which are important these days while hiring people, and that should add to the diversity?
Oh, absolutely. And there is this a dialogue around hiring for culture fit. I, for one, kind of don't relate to that. I think hiring for culture fit is a very nice way of saying let's work with people like ourselves, right?
Right.
And that's the exact opposite concept of creating a diverse workforce.
Right.
You want people from all kinds of backgrounds. You want people from different socioeconomic backgrounds as well,
Right.
from different cultures, different ethnicities, because they have their own challenges that they have gone through in their lives, and hence they bring their own perspectives. So I think it's very, very important for us to kind of, look at people from all walks of life.
Sure. All right. Moving on from the diversity part to actually something which is kind of related to the recruiting process itself. Uh,
Hmm.
with everything that we see, going into the recruiting funnel, conducting interviews has kind of become harder, right? It was anyway hard. I mean, we know it used to be harder when we used to do phone screens versus doing something which was face to face. So it was anyway hard, and now with everything remote, obviously it's become harder. What are
Right.
some of the things that we have done? If you could elaborate on that to kind of smoothen out the entire interview experience, both for the interviewers as well as for the candidates.
Right. So you hit the nail on the head, Vichy, that interviewing has always been hard, and the fact that we have to do it remotely, the fact that we have to battle with an internet lag, sometimes not being able to see each other, makes it harder. And this kind of hit us as soon as the whole COVID situation happened. We thought we got to do something about it. So we've always had a video interviewing tool, which companies would typically use for their initial phone screen. But then we realized if they have to extend beyond the initial phone screen, some of the things that we have today may not suffice. And kudos to our product and engineering team. In a very short duration, we turned around the product and rolled out some pretty interesting features. For instance, you can not only conduct and coding interviews, but now we also have the ability for you to do whiteboarding exercise, where you can drag and drop components, ask people to build out an architecture. So traditionally, you would do these system design interviews on a whiteboard. Now that can be done, and you cannot do it over Zoom. But having a virtual whiteboard where you can drag and drop components, build out a system diagram, kind of makes it easier for people to kind of conduct those interviews. So that's one thing. The second thing that we've done is from the whole candidate experience. We recently upgraded our IDE, so to make sure that the candidates have the best coding experience as they're sitting through and conducting these coding interviews. Plus, also on the interviewer side, because until pre-COVID, the platform was primarily being used from a phone screen perspective. So you're doing your initial round, and that's about it. But now you would do multiple rounds, right? So there are scenarios in certain organizations where they want to do pair programming between multiple interviewers and a single candidate, or they want to do a panel discussion. So the video interviewing tool, which is Face Code for HackerEarth, supports multiple interviewers working together with the candidate in real time and kind of knocking out those questions. And then finally, from a post-interview uh, and governance perspective, we kind of provide the entire transcript of the audio conversation. This has two benefits. A hiring manager can then reflect upon those transcripts and actually provide more relevant summaries and interview summaries on the performance of the candidate. So rather than trying to remember everything, they can just skim through the transcript and then put in their feedback. And then from a recruiting governance perspective, it builds that history that is maintained in the system. We also do an audio video recording of the entire session if in case you want to train new interviewers, tell them how to kind of shadow these interviews, or you just want to maintain a trail of all the interviews that you've done. So those are some of the things that we've rolled out in the recent past.
Sure. So just a last add-on to that question, right? Given we are doing so many changes to sort of adapt to this new world where the interviewing process is entirely remote, do you foresee some of these changes actually outlasting the COVID or the pandemic itself and kind of being there for good? Maybe things like partial automation of the interviewing process itself, right?
Right. That's a very valid point, Vishy, and I think yes. I think while we are moving to these virtual interviews as an, because we have no other option, we're forced to do it. But as we continue doing it, we will realize the value of doing something like this. So what we're trying to build out, and this is still in early stages, and I'm kind of doing a early, I'm talking about it even before it's out there. But we are working on kind of building out an AI tool that helps interviewers to conduct better interviews. So, interviewing is a hard skill. Even when you are doing it like we discussed face to face, you got to understand what the person is saying. You got to be able to take notes in real time so that you can give, kind of a summary towards the end. You got to build upon the question as the person is performing. So you're essentially multitasking, right? And sometimes it's easy to get swayed by a specific comment that the candidate made or something that the candidate missed out, right? So there is a scenario world where there is an assisted interview experience, which kind of does some of the aspects of evaluating the person's responses, what they're doing, how they're doing as they're taking the interview, so that the cognitive load on the interviewer reduces. Right? Obviously, we cannot eliminate it, but we can definitely try and reduce it. And that's something that we're working on at HackerEarth. And I think as people become more comfortable using this, right? As a candidate, I think you can vouch for it that it's a lot easier for you to write code in an IDE versus writing code on a whiteboard, right? So even if we were face to face, you may still want to give that ID experience to the candidate and say, hey, write code here. So I think even when we go back, some of these things would still continue to be there, and that's what we're hoping for. So, thanks a lot for those questions. It was good to be on the other side, Vichy. With that, I think we want to talk about what we have lined up for today's launch. Like I had announced earlier in the day, we have something special that we are announcing today. And just to, kind of give you a background on that, we started by very basic, supporting 10 15 programming languages way back in 2013, and over the years we have significantly diversified the capabilities that our platform has with respect to assessing skills. Today we support 40 different programming languages. We cut across various functions like database programming, machine learning, front end, and tons of others. And I think one thing that we would always wanted to do was to take these assessments a step closer to real world tasks. Even what we were discussing in the panel discussion just before, Isaac from Microsoft mentioned that Stripe does a beautiful job of giving a very engaging assignment to the candidates, which tells them what's the kind of work they're going to do once they're at Stripe. So, taking a leaf out of that book, what we're going to release is a full stack assessment where we can not only give the person, like, we're not only testing them on their basic programming skills, but you can actually give them an end-to-end task where they have to build out a small application which has a back end, the front end, and do the whole full stack application development. And just to kind of support it in terms of numbers, if you look at from 2015 to 2018, there has been a 205% increase in the number of jobs for full stack developers. And almost two-thirds of developers in one of the surveys said that they find it hard to assess developers and full stack skills. So with the new full stack assessment that we've released, we aim to help recruiting teams do a slightly better job in recruiting full stack developers. So with that, Rishi, could you, give the audience a quick view of what we have built?
Sure. Yeah. Um, Thank you, Sachin. Yeah, so it's like Sachin mentioned, this is something that we are going to, launch. In fact, we have already launched, and we wanted to announce this with the audience that we have today. It's obviously a big launch, and it's a very impactful one for everyone who's looking to hire full stack engineers. And I'll try to give you guys a quick sneak peek into what how the feature actually works, and feel free to shoot any questions if you have in the meanwhile. So I'll try to share my screen. Just give me a moment. All right, guys. Let me know if you guys can see my screen, or if you cannot see my screen. Just let me know. Sachin, would you be able to confirm that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So guys, I will give you a quick demo of first the part where a hiring manager or a recruiter tries to set a new question which is let's say of a full stack type, right? That would be the first part of the demo, and the second part of the demo would focus on how the candidate experience is while trying to solve some of these questions, right? So I'll start off with the hiring manager or the recruiter interface first, and how they are able to kind of set up these questions. So typically, this is how the HackerEarth admin interface or the recruiter interface looks like. If I were to create a new full stack question, I would typically go click on the button CTA that you have there, and this is what we essentially launched. This occupies a few pixels on our admin interface, but trust me, this is the Swiss Army knife of any kind of full stack evaluation that you want to do for your interviewing process. So once you click on this, what you see here is basically a quick form where you can say I want to create, let's say, a snake and ladder kind of a project, let's say, and you can give out some kind of problem statement here. Type out whatever details you want to, so that that kind of explains the problem in detail. On the right hand side, you see the difficulty level. You could choose whatever difficulty level you want to for that question, give out some scores. Let's say it's a 10 mark question, and then there are tags available for you, so that you can easily manage and kind of organize your reports, etc. Once the candidates attempt these questions. So let's say, for instance, if this full stack question is going to be using React, so I can type out React and just select that as one of the tags. Similarly, for backend, if I know that this is going to be about Node, I can type that out and add that as a tag. It's just for the information architecture sake. You could add these tags and use them while sort of going through your reports, etc., and evaluating candidates. So this is the first screen that you see as while setting the question. Moving on, the next screen basically gives you choices. This is very, very important, and I want to kind of give a few seconds extra here and have you guys sort of absorb this a bit. What you see here are the frameworks listed, both for front end as well as for back end, right? These are frameworks that we support out of the box as of today. So if you want to evaluate somebody on their React knowledge, or you want to evaluate somebody on their AngularJS knowledge, or coming to backend, if you want to evaluate somebody on Node.js or Django or Flask, you could choose any of these and kind of create a question on top of these frameworks and have your candidate attempt those questions, right? So this is very, very important. Obviously, as we go along, we would add a lot more to this list of frameworks that are available, right? Some of the popular ones that you might see missing here could be Java Spring based frameworks, or things like PHP or ROR, which are missing here. We'll be adding those very soon. But this is a very critical sort of interface that I want you guys to sort of be able to recall while using the full stack problem type. So moving on, let's say, like I said, if I were to choose React as the front end framework and Django as the backend framework, I'm basically telling the system to prepare my project accordingly. Now, the important thing to note here also is that if you want, you could only choose, just one front end framework, or you could only choose a backend framework and be done with it. You don't have to necessarily choose both. So that flexibility is always there with you. But in this case, I'm going ahead with a sample project which uses both React and Django. So I've selected both. I'll move on to the next screen. Now, this is where things get a little more technical. So just be with me and kind of try to focus on this. The first thing that you see here is the project configuration. This is basically like a metadata for your project, which says what is the, for instance, for React front end, what is the version that you're using for Node, right? What is your source directory called, things like that, right? What are your build commands, what are your deploy commands, and what are the pages that you're building and what are the URLs, right? So this is the metadata that you have for the project. This is auto populated right now, but obviously when you're creating a new question, you could always download this metadata and make changes in it and upload it again, right? So that you don't you get the complete flexibility again. Similarly, for Django backend, again, you get bunch of commands that you can configure. For instance, we have pip install that you can run. Obviously, Python migrate command is there. Then you have the deploy commands and the evaluate commands. Evaluate typically, would consist of the test cases that are part of the project. The thing to note here is that this is a simple YAML format, so nothing really fancy, but it still gives out all the basic information that is required to build and run your project. So this is an important part of setting up the full stack question. Once you have done this and kind of managed configuring your project, the next thing you do is basically upload the the scaffolding of the project, or something that you have already built. It could be a half-built project that you want a candidate to sort of enhance. It could be something which has some very very basic project structure available with some methods which have to be implemented by the candidates, or some classes to be implemented by the candidates, and so on, right? So whatever state my initial project is in, I need to upload that here to be able to proceed further. So I'll quickly try this out. Snake and ladder is a sample problem that I'm choosing here. So I upload the zip here. You could, basically export this project from one of the IDs that you are used to using, right, on your local machine. It could also be a GitHub repository that you have. All you have to do is just download that in zip format and upload it here. Now, once you do that, you'll see we were able to sort of explode that zip into various files, and this is how the system has interpreted it. We have been able to sort of extract all the files here, and now we'll move on to the next stage. We do a quick validation here. This is an editorial section where you can sort of fill in some help text for the candidate, so that they can understand what exactly is needed from their side, how they can proceed to solving these type of questions. So nothing much beyond that here, and we can basically publish the question. That's about it, right? So with a few clicks, within a few minutes, I was able to actually take one of my existing projects that I might want to test a candidate on, take that, import it into a full stack question type on HackerEarth platform, and my question is ready. Now, obviously, this is what you see here on the screen is basically a summary of what you've done so far. So I was this is the problem name that we started with. Obviously, I kept the problem statement as a simple test problem statement. You can see the frameworks that I selected. So basically, you can review everything, and you can obviously go back and edit the question, and edit any kind of detail that you want to. So this is how your full stack project question looks like. Admin interface is pretty much this, right? Another thing that I wanted to quickly show you guys was a very cool feature, and this is where again I would want to emphasize, is that when you're creating these full stack questions, a lot of times what might happen is that you don't necessarily have out of the box support for some of the frameworks that you might be using, right? And if that is the case, how do you test a candidate on something like that? So I want to quickly show you that, so that you guys understand how you can do that. So like I said, these are the frameworks which are available out of the box on the platform. But what if you wanted to test somebody on ROR and it's not available, right? Or you wanted to test somebody on, let's say, a framework built on top of Golang, right? That is not supported here. So what do? So you go to this custom tab, and this is where this entire feature kind of becomes the Swiss Army knife, and showcases its absolute potential in terms of what can be done, right? So you go to this custom tab. fill out whatever name you want to for your full stack, for your front end. So let's say I call it FE, and for the back end I call it B. It could be any framework that you are using. You can give it whatever name you want to, and here it is, right? You can select an environment which could be as simple as bare bones Ubuntu, right? You could select something like an Ubuntu which comes packaged with Node.js. You could select Java, or you could select Java which comes with Maven Gradle. You could select PHP, which comes with Composer, right? And we can continue to add on to this list. But even if you just select Ubuntu, the best part about this is that you get an almost a dedicated Ubuntu machine to yourself, right? Which and then you can basically install whatever framework you wanted to, whether it is front end or back end, and configure that for your candidates. So this is how it works. You basically get a terminal. This is a sandbox environment that you get, and you can get started with it, right? So I can type out. I can basically do apt-get on this and try to install whatever packages I want to, whatever frameworks I want to, and I can set up the entire environment on my own, right? So this is for obviously power users, users who don't have frameworks which are already supported, out of the box. This is something that is really, really cool, and I would really appreciate if you guys can use this and give some feedback, send some feedback that you have for us on this one. So I'll stop here on the admin side. I've shown you how a sample question is created. Now we'll quickly jump on to how the candidate interface actually looks like. Um, so I have it already opened here. Uh, this is the IDE that we provide. It's basically a default IDE interface that any candidate gets. And what you see here is the code for the question that I uploaded, right? So you see two folders here, one which has the backend code, the other which has the front end code. And if I drill down into this, you can see all the models, you can see the apps, etc. So for instance, this mod, if I open this models.py file, you would see that excuse me, some of these properties are not implemented, right? So this is what an admin or a hiring manager can do, right? So this code is what the candidate will come and fill in, right? So the candidate has to sort of come in and sort of implement these methods on their own, and once this is done, they can obviously evaluate their code and see whether it solves the problem that they've been asked to solve, right? So that's what the candidate does. But beyond just writing code on an IDE interface, what you also see here are the logs, right? So these are the logs that you can use to see what is happening with your application as you change your code and as you try to build it again, right? So this is very helpful again. Similarly, you get a terminal window as well, where you can uh, write commands like activate backend and basically get into a Python shell, right? Something like this. And again, use it to sort of build your models, to import data into your database. We provide SQLite as the database, so you could use that. So very powerful tool as such, right? Because if you don't have terminal, sometimes you feel handicapped. So this has been one of our learnings, while trying to provide a good development environment, which is virtual but still provides everything that a candidate might need while trying to solve a problem. So you have the logs, you have the terminal here. Again, quickly, this is the preview, which if you click, will show you how your application's current code looks like, and how it looks on the browser. So I have it opened here. This is how the current code actually looks like, a simple UI that is already built. Now, once you sort of implement the placeholder methods here, the functionality automatically would reflect on this page, and you could basically play around with this and see what is happening, right? So this is the preview that you can see anytime. And obviously then there is run code and submit code. Run code essentially would evaluate your code against the test cases which have been provided by the question setter, and submit code would essentially just take your current state of code and submit it for final evaluation, right? So this is how the candidate interface looks like. quickly showing you how the run code interface looks like. So once you click on run code, your code will be tested against some of the test cases which are already present in the project. So in this case, let's say there are three test cases. All of them seem to have failed, and the reason for that failure is obviously because we have not implemented the code right now, which was asked of us, right? So once you implement that code and you basically provide the solution, these test cases should ideally pass. And once these pass, you can obviously, click on submit code and you are done, right? So this is how the candidate interface looks like. Again, emphasis from our side has been that we provide an environment to the candidate which is as close to the real development environment, and hence you see all sorts of flexibility around using the terminal. You could use the terminal to install additional libraries if you wanted to, right? And then you have obviously the previews and the code submission and stuff like that. If you wanted to refer back to the question while attempting to write code, you can obviously open this panel, and it's like a draw that you can use to read the question again. So that's actually pretty much it. Uh, while we have invested significant energies in developing this, I am very happy that out of the box we are able to support 5, 6 frameworks as of today. But very soon we should be able to support most of the popular frameworks that you see, across the development ecosystem. So HackerEarth would be probably the only solution which would be supporting that kind of that long a list of frameworks which developers use, and that always sort of comes along with the flexibility that I talked about, right? Which is the unique part here. So I'll stop here. I hope you guys got a sense of what we've built, and hopefully you guys would be able to use it very soon.
Thanks a lot, Rishi. That was an impressive demo. We generally said that live demos don't go pretty well, but I think this one went very well. Just to kind of iterate on what you talked about, the focus for us while building out the full stack assessments has been on flexibility both on the candidate side as well as on the recruiter side. We don't want you to box you into certain frameworks or technology, and hence even if you don't see a tool or framework listed there, you can always create a custom environment, log into it, and install whatever you want to install, and just run with it. Our endeavor over the next few months would be to get customers to kind of move their existing assignments that they're probably doing in an offline manner onto HackerEarth, and would love to get any feedback from both users and recruiters. So that was our big launch for the day. And I think with that, we come to an end to the event. It's been an amazing day. First time doing a virtual event, and it's been fun. Enjoyed the panels, enjoyed the keynotes, and thank you all for listening in and giving your time today. I don't know if we have questions. If we have, we'll be happy to take that. But with that, we'll probably end the session.
Thank you, Sajid.
Thanks, Rishi. And one final thing before we kind of drop off, we are using hashtag Hire101 as a hashtag for the conference, for the event. Please provide your feedback and feel free to tag HackerEarth. Like I said, this was our first virtual event, so we are all ears. We want to know what we can do better, where did we go wrong, where did we go right, because we intend to continue doing such events, and all user feedback will be useful. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you, guys.